Welcome the Lord's chosen. When heaven updates your frequency, hell throws a press conference. Welcome to the episode nobody was ready for, the one where the town suddenly acts like your glow came with a warrant. Everyone's whispering, side-eyeing, and over-analyzing your every move like you just broke into stardom or secret knowledge. It's funny, really. The same people who never noticed your silence now think they're qualified to interpret your evolution. But here's the uncomfortable fact. When you start operating from divine elevation, your growth becomes public property to those still living in spiritual poverty. You didn't plan to trend. You just outgrew the version of yourself that made them comfortable. And now the whole community is in group chat mode, dissecting what they don't understand, trying to turn revelation into rumor. The truth is, you didn't change for attention. You changed under attention. Every glance, every whisper, every fake smile is part of the divine theater that exposes the real reason behind their fascination. Envy dressed in curiosity. The irony, the louder they talk, the clearer your purpose becomes. So buckle up, because this isn't gossip, this is prophecy in plain sight. And if the whole town is buzzing about your look, your glow, your shift, maybe, just maybe, it's not because something's wrong with you. It's because something ancient finally woke up through you. And trust me, they can't unsee it now. Number one, they mistook attention for authority. That's the real problem. Not what they say about you, but what they believe their words can control. The moment people start talking about you, something strange happens. They think the volume of their gossip gives them the right to define your story. They confuse public noise with divine permission. But attention doesn't make them right. It just exposes how desperate they are to feel relevant again. When people can't figure you out, they'll try to manage the narrative. They'll speak like experts on a subject they only studied through rumor. They'll twist facts into entertainment because chaos is the only way they can feel powerful. But here's the truth they'll never admit. Their obsession isn't born from hatred, it's born from displacement. You took up space they were never bold enough to occupy. You became visible in a world that prefers predictable. And now, they're reacting to your rise like it's an offense against the ordinary. Authority doesn't come from who talks the most. It comes from who walks with purpose when no one's clapping. The loudest voice in the room isn't always the one heaven listens to. While they're trying to trend your name, God is still writing your next chapter in silence. Their noise is temporary, your calling is permanent, and deep down they know it. That's why they panic when they see your peace. You're too calm for someone who's being talked about, too grounded for someone they expected to crumble. Your steadiness humiliates their drama. What they call exposure is really their own revelation. They're revealing what they worship: control, perception, and validation. They think if they can manipulate the crowd, they can manipulate your confidence. But real authority doesn't need an audience. It doesn't beg to be believed. It simply moves, and the world adjusts. You've reached that level where your presence redefines the atmosphere, not by shouting, but by simply existing. Let them keep talking. They're building the stage for the very moment they'll have to admit you were chosen long before they started paying attention. Because in the end, all their noise will become background music to your divine proof that attention never outranks assignment. Number two, you became the mirror they avoided for years. That's why their energy shifted the moment you walked in. It was never about what you wore, how you looked, or what you said. It was about what your presence reflected back at them. You became living evidence of what's possible when someone stops pretending. And that kind of truth terrifies people who have built their identity around disguise. They're not staring because they admire you. They're staring because they see themselves, or at least what they could have been if they had chosen courage over comfort. Your growth pulled the mask off everyone still hiding behind excuses. You didn't mean to confront them. You just stopped shrinking. You started healing, evolving, and aligning, and suddenly their carefully constructed normal started to look hollow. It's not your success that unsettles them. It's the quiet reminder that they had the same access, but never had the same discipline. When people spend too long avoiding the truth about themselves, anyone who embodies honesty becomes an uninvited spotlight. That's what you are, an unfiltered reminder that transformation is possible, but it costs everything they're not willing to surrender. They see your peace and call it arrogance, your confidence and call it pride, your light and call it attention-seeking. They have to rename what they don't understand just to make peace with their own stagnation. The truth is, you didn't come to expose anyone. Your evolution just revealed who was pretending to grow. And that's why it hurts them, because you didn't just change. You validated every warning they ignored. Your glow speaks of inner work, faith, endurance, and choices that nobody clapped for. They see the result, but not the wrestle. They envy the reflection, but despise the process. So now every glance you get isn't about vanity. It's a spiritual reaction. Your light interrupts their illusion. You stand as proof that pretending is exhausting and authenticity is freedom. They can't unsee what you've become, and deep down, they wish it were them. But instead of owning that truth, they'd rather project their discomfort onto you. Still, none of it matters, because you didn't come to mirror their fears. You came to remind the world that reflection isn't about resemblance, it's about revelation. Number 3, the more they talk, the more they testify. Every word spoken about you, every rumor, every side comment, every dramatic exaggeration is actually proof that something about you refuses to be ignored. They don't realize it, but their conversations are confessions. The moment your name leaves their mouth, they acknowledge your impact. People don't gossip about the insignificant. They gossip about what disturbs their sense of control. You've become a walking disruption to the stories they told themselves about how life should go. It's ironic. They think they're tearing you down, but they're really spreading your evidence. Every time they repeat your story, twist your truth, or try to downplay your rise, they're adding more attention to the very thing they hoped would disappear. You've become the topic that exposes their obsession. The louder they get, the clearer it becomes that your presence carries weight. No one wastes energy talking about something that doesn't matter. Their constant chatter is a sign that you've entered a level where silence can no longer contain you. They think they're winning by turning you into gossip, but in reality, they're doing free publicity for your purpose. They don't understand that God has a strange sense of humor. He uses even their hate as a microphone. What they meant for humiliation becomes the headline for your confirmation. Every rumor is a recycled prophecy. Every insult is a disguised announcement that you've shifted dimensions. The more they speak, the more the universe bears witness that you've evolved. Deep down, the reason they can't stop mentioning your name is because they feel the change in the air. Something about your growth forces a reaction. You've become too undeniable to ignore, too transformed to dismiss. And because they don't have the vocabulary for your new season, they talk in confusion. But confusion is still acknowledgement. Their chatter means you're echoing through spaces they never imagined you'd reach. So let them keep talking. It's part of the process. You don't need to defend yourself when every critic is unknowingly documenting your rise. Their words are becoming receipts of your relevance, because whether they whisper or shout, they're all saying the same thing without realizing it. You're happening, and they can't stop it. Number 4, their confusion is your confirmation. When everything around your name starts to sound chaotic, when stories twist, opinions clash, and people suddenly can't read you anymore, that's not a crisis. That's divine evidence. It means heaven has upgraded your signal, and the people who once understood you are now tuned to an old frequency. You've shifted dimensions, but they're still trying to translate you with the language of who you used to be. They call you unpredictable, distant, or different, but what they're really saying is, I can't categorize this anymore. You stopped fitting their expectations, and now their minds can't keep up. The same ones who once claimed they knew you are confused because you no longer mirror the patterns that made them comfortable. You're not broken. You're just broadcasting on a higher wavelength. And when heaven changes your frequency, not everyone gets the update. People think confusion means something went wrong. But sometimes it's proof that the spiritual hierarchy has shifted. You've moved from being understood by the crowd to being recognized by the code. God doesn't hide his chosen ones, he encrypts them. That's why certain people can look right at you and still not see you. You've become invisible to those who can't interpret growth without gossip. The truth is, your evolution demands misinterpretation. If everyone still understood you, it would mean you never left your old level. Confusion is a sign that you've outgrown explanation. You're now living in a frequency where logic has limits, and only discernment can catch up. They're analyzing from intellect what can only be decoded through spirit. And because they can't grasp it, they call it strange. But strange is what elevation sounds like to those still stuck in cycles. So don't chase understanding from people who were only assigned to your history. Their confusion doesn't disqualify you. It confirms the shift. You're not meant to be familiar anymore. You're meant to be felt, not figured out. Every misunderstanding is a sign that you've entered sacred territory, where heaven hides you from those who can't handle who you've become. Their confusion is the sound of your confirmation echoing through realms they were never meant to access. Number 5, they're trying to investigate what was meant to be witnessed. Some people can't just stand back and let transformation speak for itself. They need to dissect it, analyze it, and find something wrong with it to make sense of why it didn't happen for them. They treat your growth like a mystery to solve instead of a miracle to respect. Every breakthrough you experience becomes a case file in their mind, something they feel obligated to pick apart, as if your evolution owes them an explanation. But not everything that's divine comes with documentation. Some changes are meant to be witnessed, not understood. The human instinct is to analyze what the spirit meant to reveal. And in doing so, people strip the sacred of its power. Your transformation is one of those things. It's not an event to gossip about. It's a moment heaven orchestrated to confront the collective comfort of those around you. It was never supposed to make sense. It was supposed to make impact. When you evolve, people will look for logic where there's only grace. They'll demand evidence, timelines, and proof, because they can't handle that something holy happened without their permission. You became a living contradiction to their expectations, and that threatens their sense of control. They want to know how you did it, not because they're inspired, but because they're offended that you didn't need their validation to rise. They turn your obedience into an investigation. But God doesn't move in ways that flatter the curious. Some things are meant to confuse those who refuse to believe. You are one of those things, a divine interruption that doesn't fit neatly into explanation. Your growth wasn't a scandal, it was a statement. You didn't skip steps, you surrendered where they stalled. And now they're busy interrogating what heaven already approved. So while they gather evidence, heaven gathers witnesses. While they gossip, God confirms. Your evolution doesn't need their understanding, it demands their observation. Because when heaven does something new, the right response isn't to analyze it, it's to honor it. You are living proof that not every miracle is meant to be explained. Some are simply meant to make the world uncomfortable enough to change. Number 6, you're not trending, you're triggering. There's a big difference. Trends come and go, but what you've become has staying power, and that unsettles people. You didn't rise because of hype or timing. You rose because heaven decided your silence had served its purpose. Now your very existence confronts everything people tried to ignore about themselves. You didn't go viral, you went vital. Necessary, disruptive, undeniable. Your presence doesn't entertain, it exposes. It wakes people up to the areas of their lives they've been pretending to be asleep in. You didn't post more, shout louder, or chase attention. You simply became, and in doing so, you activated something buried deep in others. Guilt, envy, fear, disbelief. It's not you they dislike. It's what your transformation makes them feel. You're the living reminder of the promises they buried, the dreams they delayed, the standards they lowered. You walk in rooms carrying a vibration that shakes every false identity nearby. That's why they whisper, roll their eyes, or act uncomfortable. Your energy speaks the language of truth, and not everyone can handle fluency. What they call controversy is actually conviction. They're not outraged because you did anything wrong. They're reacting to the echo of their own unhealed places. Your progress threatens their excuses. Your peace interrupts their pity party. Your glow exposes the dullness of pretending. You're not trending because of drama. You're trending in their spirit because of disruption. You remind them that change is possible, and that's too heavy for those still addicted to denial. The truth is, real transformation always triggers before it teaches. Before people celebrate your breakthrough, they'll feel offended by it. It's not that you're too much, it's that they've been living too little. And when someone suddenly starts walking in truth, it shakes the foundations of every comfortable lie. That's what your presence does. It doesn't just shift the atmosphere, it forces decisions. So no, you didn't go viral. You became vital to the timeline of everyone who crosses your path. Because real chosen ones don't ride waves, they create them. You're not the topic of the week. You're the trigger that exposes what still needs to heal. Number 7, the noise around you is spiritual feedback. Every whisper, every rumor, every sideways comment, it's not random, it's a reaction. When God recalibrates a vessel, the atmosphere responds. Things that once felt familiar start to sound distorted because you're no longer vibrating on the same frequency. What used to connect now clashes. The gossip, the criticism, the sudden discomfort from people who used to be at peace with you. That's not chaos. That's confirmation. You've outgrown the wavelength that used to sustain your old season. When God starts upgrading your spirit, everything that's not supposed to go with you starts to make noise. People who were silent suddenly have something to say. Spaces that once felt comfortable now feel too small. Conversations that used to make sense now feel draining. That's what happens when heaven tunes your frequency higher. The static gets louder before the sound gets clear. The noise isn't meant to scare you. It's feedback that the system is adjusting. Every reaction around you is evidence that your alignment is shifting. You see, your elevation disrupts whatever was surviving off your stagnation. Some people depended on your doubt to feel powerful. They fed off your uncertainty, your need for approval, your willingness to stay small. Now that you've stepped into clarity, they can't draw from you anymore. Their gossip is the cry of systems losing access. They're not mad at you. They're panicking because they can't tune in like before. That's why you can't fight the noise. You don't fix feedback by arguing with the speaker. You adjust your position. The moment you stop responding, the static starts to fade. The people making the most noise are the ones who felt the most dependent on your old vibration. You're not responsible for their distortion. Your only job is to stay aligned, stay refined, and stay tuned to the frequency of your purpose. So when the chatter rises, smile. That's not rejection, that's resonance. It means heaven turned your volume up. The noise around you isn't proof that something's wrong. It's proof that you're being fine-tuned. You've become too clear for confusion to stay quiet. Every rumor, every reaction, every burst of tension is just feedback from a world that no longer fits your frequency. Number 8, they don't hate you. They hate what you reveal about their comfort. Your presence unsettles them because it exposes what they could have been if they hadn't stopped trying. You didn't come to compete, you came to complete a version of yourself that refused to die. But in doing that, you accidentally pulled the blanket off everyone else's excuses. Your glow didn't embarrass them, it convicted them. It showed how long they've been sitting on gifts, how long they've been calling stagnation patience, and how easily they settled for average while you kept reaching for alignment. Your light didn't steal their spotlight, it simply reminded it of its true owner. The same light that was meant to shine through them now feels like judgment shining on them, and that's the real reason they can't stand you. It's not jealousy in the shallow sense, it's exposure in the spiritual sense. Your excellence makes their apathy uncomfortable. Your discipline exposes their delay. Your movement reminds them that comfort has a cost, and it's often destiny. When someone has built their identity around comfort, your growth becomes a threat. You didn't change the game, you just started playing it the way it was meant to be played, with purpose, honesty, and effort. But for people who have made peace with mediocrity, that looks offensive. They'll call you too much, lucky, or trying to prove something, not because you are, but because they can't face the truth that they stopped proving anything at all. Your progress triggers their procrastination. The truth is, your glow isn't arrogance, it's accountability. Without even trying, you remind people that potential means nothing without movement. You are living proof that excuses are expensive and comfort is overrated. That's why they whisper, mock, or distance themselves. It's easier for them to dislike you than to confront the parts of themselves that envy your freedom. But don't shrink to soothe them. You weren't designed to dim down just because others chose to stop shining. Let your glow do what it was made to do. Disrupt the darkness and awaken the dormant. Because it's not hate you're facing, it's conviction in disguise. You didn't take their light, you just reminded it where it belonged all along. Number 9, the more they mock, the more they mock you. Every insult, every sarcastic laugh, every attempt to make light of your growth, it all becomes spiritual evidence that you've shifted. What they call mockery, heaven calls verification. They can't help themselves. Even in their criticism, they're confessing that something about you has changed. You've become too noticeable to dismiss, so their disbelief becomes the only language they have left to express recognition. Mockery is strange like that. It's disguised respect. They won't celebrate you publicly, but they'll mention you constantly. They'll act like you're a joke, but they can't stop talking about you. That's not coincidence. That's obsession pretending to be indifference. Every time they roll their eyes, they're secretly acknowledging your relevance. Every time they try to make you small, they're confirming that you've become too significant to ignore. You've been spiritually certified through their disbelief. It's one thing when people praise you, but when your enemies start reacting, that's when heaven stamps it as official. Divine elevation always triggers resistance, and that resistance is a sign that your name now carries weight. The same mouths that mocked Noah built the flood's reputation. The same voices that doubted David ended up echoing his victory. History has always been written by those who were mocked first and understood later. Their jokes are receipts of your impact. They think they're tearing you down, but they're helping heaven build your resume. Each insult is like an invisible tag that says, "We noticed the shift." Their disbelief doesn't discredit you, it documents you. You've become the conversation they can't stop having because your transformation threatens their normal. They're not laughing because you're funny. They're laughing because they're uncomfortable. That's why you don't fight back. You let them mock, because mockery has a shelf life, and when it expires, revelation begins. Every word they spoke will become the evidence that proves you were chosen all along. They didn't curse you. They crowned you without knowing it. Their laughter wasn't rejection. It was recognition in disguise. Because the truth is, mockery never comes to those who stay the same. It only visits those heaven just promoted. Number 10, your transformation broke their agreement of mediocrity. Before you shifted, there was an unspoken pact among them, a silent understanding that everyone would play small, move safely, and pretend that normal was noble. It wasn't written down or said out loud, but it was real. They bonded over limitation, disguised fear as wisdom, and called stagnation stability. Then you walked in, not louder, not prouder, just freer, and suddenly the entire system they built around comfort started to crack. You didn't break their peace, you broke their pattern. Your evolution became evidence that the ceiling they worshipped was actually made of glass. You showed up as living proof that what they called impossible was just untapped. And instead of celebrating, they panicked. You shattered the illusion that playing it safe was holy. You didn't just change, you redefined what was acceptable. Your very existence became rebellion wrapped in grace. They weren't ready for someone who moved with quiet confidence instead of collective fear. They wanted you to stay the same so everyone could feel equal in their excuses. Your growth disrupted that comfort. You became the reminder that anyone can rise, but not everyone will. That's why they call you different, distant, or too focused. It's their way of trying to make peace with the guilt your courage stirs in them. The truth is, mediocrity needs agreement to survive. It thrives when people collectively settle for less. You broke that agreement by simply saying yes. Yes to calling, yes to healing, yes to becoming. And that yes echoed louder than their silence ever could. You made movement contagious, and that terrified those who preferred stillness. They can't unsee your breakthrough, but they also can't face what it exposes, that their limits were never real, just rehearsed. Your transformation wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was obedience to something higher. You didn't rise to prove them wrong. You rose to prove God right. Grace gave you permission to break the rules that fear wrote. And now, every time you walk into a room, the air changes. They feel it, even if they never say it. That your growth didn't just elevate you. It dismantled the illusion that staying average was ever heaven's will. Number 11. They're studying you because they missed the move. The same people who once overlooked you are now taking notes, replaying moments, and asking questions that sound more like accusations. They can't understand how you evolved without their help, so they treat your transformation like a mystery to solve. To them, it feels unnatural, as if something this authentic must have a secret formula. But the truth is, they're not analyzing you because you changed too fast. They're analyzing you because they paused too long. They missed the moment when heaven made the shift. When it was time to surrender, they stalled. When it was time to grow, they hesitated. While they were debating, you were obeying. While they were waiting for perfect timing, you were walking through uncertainty with faith. Now that the results are visible, they're trying to reconstruct the process they avoided. But revelation doesn't come from research. It comes from relationship. And that's something no investigation can replicate. They study your moves, your words, your glow, hoping to find a pattern that makes it make sense. But what they're dissecting isn't your progress, it's their regret. Every time they discuss you, they're not seeking understanding. They're seeking closure for the choices they didn't make. You've become a timeline of conviction, a living example of what happens when obedience meets timing. Your life now carries the evidence of what they were meant to become, but never had the courage to pursue. You didn't outpace them by luck. You outgrew them by alignment. There's no shortcut for consistency, no blueprint for grace. What they call overnight took years of surrender they never saw. Now their curiosity is really guilt wearing a scholar's robe. They watch your every step not to learn from it, but to justify their own delay. Let them keep studying. They can't replicate a move they didn't participate in. You're not a case study. You're a living timeline of divine timing. They can't explain you because you're the result of a process they abandoned. You're not complicated. You're just evidence of what happens when someone says yes, while others were still asking for a sign. Number 12. You're the evidence that prophecy has a face. For so long, people treated divine calling like poetry, something to admire from a distance but never actually see fulfilled. They believed prophecy was abstract, reserved for someone far away, someone unreal. Then you appeared, carrying everything they said would never manifest, and suddenly what they dismissed as metaphor stood before them in motion. You became the physical proof that what heaven speaks isn't just spiritual language. It's a living assignment. They used to talk about purpose like it was theory. You made it tangible. You turned faith into flesh, obedience into presence, destiny into daily rhythm. You didn't just quote the promise, you became it. And that's what unsettles people the most. It's easy to agree with prophecy when it stays invisible, but it's hard to face when it shows up wearing someone you used to underestimate. You're the fulfillment they never thought would happen in their lifetime, especially not through you. The same ones who thought the words spoken over your life were exaggerated are now forced to witness every line come alive. And instead of celebrating, many feel uncomfortable because your arrival confirms their unbelief. Your manifestation exposes who treated prophecy like entertainment instead of instruction. You didn't just receive the word, you walked it out. You did the waiting, the refining, the crying, the surrendering. Now you stand as living evidence that prophecy was never just prediction, it was preparation. There's power in that. You make the invisible undeniable. You make people confront the reality that heaven keeps receipts. Every promise spoken, every delay endured, every prayer whispered in private, it all built the version of you that exists now. You carry the weight of prophecy fulfilled, and that makes you unrecognizable to those who only knew your past. You didn't come to prove anything, you came to embody everything. You are the walking reminder that God doesn't speak for applause, He speaks for manifestation. And now your life preaches louder than any sermon. They can debate, deny, or doubt all they want, but they can't ignore the truth standing in front of them. Prophecy finally has a pulse, and it looks exactly like you. Number 13. Every whisper is actually worship in disguise. They'll never say it out loud, but their constant conversations about you are not about curiosity. They're about fixation. You've occupied space in their minds that was never meant for gossip, and now they confuse obsession for observation. What they call just talking is actually their spirit acknowledging something it can't control. They're unconsciously bowing to what they don't understand. Obsession is the counterfeit of reverence. When people can't honor you publicly, they mimic the act in distortion. Every time your name slips into their conversations, they participate in a form of worship they don't realize they're performing. You've become an altar in their thoughts, not because you demanded it, but because your presence disrupted their inner hierarchy. You represent something sacred that their ego can't explain. Growth without permission, peace without validation, success without conformity. That contradiction messes with them, so they process it through repetition. And repetition is worship, even when it's bitter. Their constant mention of your name is proof that you've invaded their spiritual space. You've become a frequency they can't tune out. Even their negativity carries your imprint, because you're now part of their awareness. You're not haunting them, their denial is. They can't stop replaying your journey, wondering how you did it, how you changed, how you stayed unshaken when everything that should have broken you didn't. Their whispers are just their way of staying connected to a power they pretended not to see. You don't need their praise, and you don't need to defend yourself. The irony is that the more they talk, the louder heaven hears their confession. They're acknowledging your significance through the very act of trying to diminish it. Every rumor, every critique, every backhanded comment is an unintended bow, a spiritual acknowledgement that something greater is happening through you. Let them keep whispering. Their words are writing your recognition in realms they'll never access, because whether it's spoken in envy, curiosity, or disbelief, one truth remains. What they can't stop talking about, they've already crowned in their spirit. You don't need applause when even your critics can't stop testifying. They just don't realize their whispers have already turned into worship. Number 14. You didn't change to impress. You evolved to inherit. There's a huge difference. You didn't wake up one day and decide to prove anything to anyone. You simply reached the point where pretending became too heavy, and the truth of who you are demanded expression. What they call arrogance is really alignment. You're not showing off, you're showing up for the version of you that fear buried under years of doubt, guilt, and false humility. This isn't performance, it's remembrance. You finally remembered your assignment, and that confidence they mistake for pride is really clarity. When you start walking like someone who knows who they are, it unsettles those who've built comfort around confusion. They're used to the version of you that second-guessed everything, apologized for existing, and needed permission to shine. But that version died the moment you stopped surviving and started inheriting. You stopped living like a guest in your own life. You stopped waiting for external validation to activate what was already written inside you. And now that you've stepped into it, they call it ego, because they don't recognize peace without approval. You didn't evolve to impress them. You evolved because heaven had more for you than endurance. You were never meant to just make it through. You were meant to own it. Growth isn't vanity, it's stewardship. When you finally embrace your calling, it demands posture, not arrogance, but authority. And authority feels offensive to those still negotiating with fear. That's why they whisper about your confidence as if it's crime. They can't grasp that self-assurance isn't rebellion, it's restoration. You're not becoming someone new. You're coming back to the original blueprint, the one fear and trauma tried to rewrite. You're reclaiming the sound, the stance, the soul that was always yours before life convinced you to shrink. This isn't reinvention, it's return. And return always looks like revolution to those who've never left mediocrity. So don't shrink. You're not showing off, you're showing evidence that evolution isn't pride, it's prophecy fulfilled. You're not acting brand new, you're acting like someone who finally remembered they were never ordinary. And the world can either adjust or stay confused, but one thing's for sure. You're not evolving for applause. You're evolving to inherit everything that already had your name on it. Everything they whispered, mocked, or misunderstood was never random. It was recognition disguised as resistance. You didn't rise because you wanted attention. You rose because heaven required evidence. Every shift, every confrontation, every misunderstanding became divine documentation that you were chosen long before anyone knew your name. You didn't evolve to please the crowd, you evolved to fulfill the covenant. You didn't glow to be seen, you glowed because obedience has a light of its own. And now, every eye that watches, whether with admiration or accusation, is being forced to witness the reality of prophecy made flesh. You've become living proof that destiny doesn't ask for permission. It simply arrives when the appointed time collides with a prepared soul. The noise, the whispers, the envy, none of it can erase what has already been written. Their confusion confirmed your calling. Their gossip became the background music to your growth. Their disbelief became the fuel that proved you were never operating on public approval, but divine assignment. You outgrew explanations because your existence itself became the message. They don't need to understand, they just need to watch. Because your becoming is the revelation they didn't know they were waiting for. And through it all, you didn't lose your essence, you refined it. You didn't switch sides, you switched frequencies. You stopped asking for validation from voices that weren't tuned to your purpose. Now, the very same ones who questioned you can't stop talking about you, because heaven made you impossible to ignore. You're not trending, you're transforming. You're not being discussed, you're being documented. And when history looks back, it won't see a scandal, it will see a signal. You are that signal, a living broadcast of what happens when obedience collides with divine timing. So keep standing tall, keep walking in quiet authority. Let the noise fade while the truth amplifies, because no matter how much they talk, your purpose keeps speaking louder. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to redefine what chosen looks like. If this message spoke to your spirit, don't just scroll away. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful revelations like this. Hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it right now. Your support keeps the message alive. And trust me, this movement is just getting started. Stay blessed always.